Okay, let's go.
In a Sharia state.
Non-Muslim.
Can you tell me what is the criteria for us to stone someone in a Sharia state if they commit adultery?
I believe it's stoning to death.
What do we need as evidence for that? No. And I'll tell you something, I've not come across a single case in Islamic history, 1,400 years, of stoning to death where the evidence is established. Because the criteria is so strict. Allah put the punishment as a deterrent, but people don't research the criteria, and that's the point. They just deter. The criteria is the following. There has to be 4 male practicing Muslim men. Why practicing? For example, they cannot look in the window and see someone committing adultery because you cannot spy. Allah tells you not to spy. So if you're a practicing Muslim, you wouldn't spy. If you spy, the testimony is not accepted because you are going against Islamic ruling. They have to witness the act of penetration. So you don't see her entering someone's home. No. They have to see penetration with their own eyes. And then they have to willingly testify X, Y, and Z place. This is impossible unless you do it in the street, in a public place, which even in this country you would have offenses of public indecency. Allah put that criteria because He doesn't want to punish. Allah says in the Quran, مَا يَفْعَلُ اللَّهُ بِعَذَابِكُمْ. What would Allah do with your punishment? He's the creator. He doesn't need to punish you or anyone. Can you tell me?
All right, there are a few problems I'll list quickly, and then somebody else takes it over, right? First thing first, he says he has never heard of this in any country. I think I've heard a few cases in Iran, right? And what were the evidences? You can question whether they were really good evidence or not. And the testimony of 4 men, he's right about that. The question is, what is the understanding that he gives is nowhere to be found in the Quran, basically, that you have to see the penetration. I don't know where he got it from. If anybody knows if it's mentioned in the Quran, then please bring it to our attention. And that's what all I have to say pretty much, right? And so I'm saying this is blatantly wrong. Whatever his response is really ludicrous, to be honest.
It's quite a funny video, I would say. His response is very
Right.
funny, and it actually shows the ridiculousness of this rule, of this particular ruling, right? Because how would a rule become a deterrent if the criteria for establishing that particular crime, quote unquote, is so impossible?
Stringent.
Yeah, it's almost and then he says it's impossible in a way to actually prove or to punish someone for this crime. Why? Because it requires 4 practicing men to actually
Muslim,
witness the
Muslim.
act of penetration. So these are the 4 points that he mentioned, and I'll clarify, Philo. So according to the fiqh, the Islamic jurisprudence, it is indeed understood that they have to actually witness the act of penetration, because I think it is based on some sort of event that happened during the second caliph's life. I think I might be wrong, but it is indeed the case that the fiqh or the details of this particular ruling is indeed
So you're saying Umar's
implemented in that way.
Yeah, Umar's
Umar, yeah.
right.
So this was the understanding that he took, as far as I can remember. I might be very wrong, but I do know that this is indeed the case, that they have to witness the act of penetration, which is again quite impossible. So if someone sees 2 people in bed, that isn't enough. Secondly, he mentioned that they should be practicing, and then he said the fact that they are practicing would mean that they cannot be peeking into someone's house or into someone's room. So the fact that one person saw an act, and he cannot call upon other people to witness it so that later on he can establish it in the court. I'm telling you that this is how it works. So if someone actually by mistake, a practicing Muslim by mistake, actually witnesses an act happening, and what he does is he calls upon 3 other men to witness this act so that he can later establish it in the court, that this very fact would be considered, would make him a non-practicing. Because why are they actually peeking into someone's house deliberately? So now it is, I mean, the whole point of this of criminalizing this act then becomes meaningless, because you are not able to establish it. If you cannot establish it, how would this become a deterrent? So it's
Exactly.
quite ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing in the sense that if there's something wrong with adultery and therefore adultery needs to be punished, but the 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 inefficacy of its detection, the inefficiencies in its detection is such that it it requires X amount of witnesses, and it's highly rigorous of a high standard, and it can never be sufficiently demonstrated in a court of law, then it becomes a redundant punishment, and therefore it cannot successfully regulate that sort of behavior. And as Kylie said, it can't be a significant enough deterrent. So in effect, what he has done, this defender of Islam, in his bid to make it more politically correct and to lighten the quote unquote barbaric nature of the punishment, he's in effect just admitted and acknowledged that the punishment for adultery is purely cosmetic, right? It's just like it's it's a useless one that is in there in the books, but that is he in effect throws his God into the water there. But
Under the
kind of
bus.
right?
Is actually
That-
exposing the inefficacy of the process that has been proposed by God, or that has been instructed.
Right. I
by
mean, you can keep doing zina as long as you don't get caught.
Exactly.
Especially four men watching you.
and according to him,
Practicing
it's never-
Muslim men
and
watching
according
you.
to him,
you know?
according to him, they'll never be caught. That's what he just said. So the punishment,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You know.
this is another testament to, therefore, if this is true, if this line of thinking is true, and this is what God intended, or this is, first of all, it's weird why God intended.
Weird
It is.
consequences, by the way. Weird
It's a weird
consequences.
consequence. Why would God design a punishment that is just completely ineffective? And why would God have a law against something if it can't never be implemented?
Maybe
I'd like to point out.
maybe God wants you to do zina, basically.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out over here as well that even if someone places a camera in the room in order to make sure that to be able to witness it, right, that if that would equate to peeking, or trying to being curious about it as well. So that again would make it that if that act non-practicing, right? So that person who has actually made that video would become a non-practicing Muslim, and therefore that video would, as far as my understanding goes, the Islamic code should
Dismiss it,
what do you call it, dismiss that as evidence, right? Should
Right.
reject that to be accepted as evidence, because this was an act, this was a criminal act committed by that witness.
The witness is not Muslim, basically, at that point, basically.
Yeah.
You could improve God's punishment, but this again, it shows kind of the fallibility of this apparent divine being, that he comes out with such a ineffective, non-deterrent punishment that will never apply, and that human beings can improve upon it. For example, in the near future, you could have artificial. Let's say we accept that adultery has to be curbed. Let's say we accept that adultery is wrong. Hypothetically, let's accept adultery is wrong, and we need to reduce adultery. We need to reduce sex outside of marriage. We need to reduce sexual relations with people who are not married, etc. Well, we can improve upon God's own ineffective punishment by creating an alternative effective punishment, or deterring, a more effective deterrent. For example, you can imagine in the future, 100 years or so from now, artificial intelligence technologies which only record when there is an act of sexual relationship with two people who are not supposed to engage in a sexual relationship, right? You can have cameras, for example, installed inside of every home, right? Again, we're hypothetically assuming this is correct to do this, right? Cameras implemented within every home, watching, or not just homes, but elsewhere as well, which records all our activities and will only flag up those illegal activities, including sexual relationships that are illegal, that gets flagged up to this kind of body of people, like police, some sort of police agency, who then will see it, right?
You're
In other words,
suggesting something like Black Mirror.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, they're not actively
like
watching.
a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, there's no real privacy concern in the sense that people are not just 100% all the time, 24/7, just watching you through a security camera. It only gets flagged and becomes viewable at the event where the artificial intelligent technology realizes this is an illegal sexual act. That's when the people can look at that particular video and then use that as evidence to prosecute the crime. Yeah, so now we've significantly improved God's aim
Right.
to stop adultery, and you don't need 4 witnesses. You've got video evidence, and even if you had to adopt it with the 4 witness rule, you could have like 4 random police officers who are practicing. Let's say who sees the
Watch that video.
yeah, and there you go. You just made it halal at that point. But even if you get rid of that rule, the 4th thing, you don't need that. Why do you need? It's a bit arbitrary that you need 4. Why not? Why wouldn't video evidence qualify? It just wouldn't it? It doesn't make any pragmatic or practical sense why you need 4 witnesses when you have that video evidence, and that would, I would imagine, significantly deter this sort of behavior. In fact, it'll be more worthy of deterrence if it's perfect, if artificial intelligence or near perfect, if it always flags this sort of behavior up, it always records it, and it always produces evidence, it will significantly deter illegal sexual relations. That would be a much better world to achieve God's aim here. And it seems like God did not even think about these things.
Right. Absolutely right.
Exactly. Yeah. Shall we move on to the next one? I think there are lots of things that could be added here, but I think we're gonna go very
We have
deep.
covered the gist.
Yeah, we just covered the essential points here, so that's good. We should move on to the next one, right? All right, the next one is, I don't know. It's what are we getting into? This one. Let's
We
see.
should be. What would convince you